evening's town meeting on the Freedom of Information Act is being sponsored by the Coalition to Save Clifton. The Freedom of Information Act, in our humble opinion, is one of the most critical pieces of legislation for the advancement of our society. It is a very powerful tool that will ensure more transparency and accountability in government, the hallmarks of good governance and successful governance, because information is, as they say, knowledge is power. And so we are encouraging the government to pass without delay that very important bill. And so this evening we are here for the purpose of, one, to provide a final opportunity for information to be shared, because according to the Minister of Education, who has carriage for this bill, this should have been submitted to Parliament last month. And so this represents perhaps the last opportunity for information to be shared to the general public, and also for the public to give their comments and feedback to be included in the final draft. Unfortunately, the final draft has not been made available to many of us, perhaps to some, but we're not aware that it has been made available, and therefore we are not aware of what it contains. But we're going to try to get as much information in that as possible. And we are also here to demonstrate to the government that this bill really should be passed without delay. And we trust that the people who are here would communicate that information to the government, because the time has come, indeed come and gone, when that should have been done. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we're here, and we request your support in vigorously pushing for that bill to be not only introduced but passed and implemented before the next general election. The format this evening is for us to have presentations by eminently qualified individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to now introduce our presenters, and we invite you to hold your applause until they've all been introduced, and then we can give them all a nice welcome to this meeting. Our first presenter is Mr. Matt Aubrey. Matt is the Executive Director for the Organization for Responsible Governance, a relatively new organization, but very effective in mobilizing public opinion for issues such as this. And he is a licensed master social worker and a graduate of the Hunter School of Social Work. Matt has more than 24 years experience leading dynamic teams at award-winning not-for-profit organization. We got to use him down in Bayonne. He served as a director at YAI Network, an international recognized disabilities agency, and Action Against Hunger, an internationally renowned global humanitarian and hunger relief organization. So he comes well equipped. Here in the Bahamas, Matt was the Director of Community Relations and Partnerships for Bahama, overseeing the Believe Foundation. Additionally, he has served as a consultant for REACH, Young Marine Explorers, the Seahorse Institute, and the Ministry of Social Services. So he is very active and has wide and extensive experience in these areas. He has worked on advocacy and social justice efforts in the United States, Jordan, India, and Bangladesh, also the Bahamas and the United Emirates. Matt is recognized as an expert in fundraising. Hallelujah. A man who is really a friend of everybody. Once you can raise funds, you're a friend of everybody. marketing, and not-for-profit management. He has lectured at Baruch University, Adelphi University, and New York University. I give you Matt Aubrey. And then we have, before you present, let me introduce the others, please, and then we'll just have the presentations. Lamar Campbell. Lamar is an attorney with extensive experience in the fields of governance, development, and civil society. Lamarck is the current chairman of Citizens for a Better Bahamas, a local non-governmental, non-partisan organization focused on improving the country through advocating for transparency and accountability and the fight against corruption on all levels of society. Before returning to the Bahamas in 2014, Lamarck lived in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, where he worked as a legal analyst for Transparency International, the world's leading anti-corruption agency. In this role, he made numerous recommendations for government anti-corruption reforms in Georgia, such as the appointment of judges and amendments to the Freedom of Information Act. So he's got great experience for the role he is playing in the Bahamas now. Lamarck holds a degree in sociology from Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. He subsequently received a postgraduate diploma in diplomacy from the University of Malta and obtained a Master of Arts degree in law from the University of Bristol, England. Following this, Lamarck was admitted to both the Bar of England and Wales and the Bahamas Bar. We have next Bishop Walter Hanschel. When we inquired for an official bio from him, he burst laugh in my face. He said, "You asking me for a bio as well as you?" And he didn't give it. But I will say to you, everyone in the Bahamas basically knows Bishop Walter Hanschel. Bishop Hanschel is a religious leader in our community, functioning in the area on Wolf Road that we call the traditional community. Some people call it grassroots, but we call it the traditional community. And Bishop Hanschel is the pastor of a consortium of churches stretching throughout the Bahamas, Asia, Africa, and a number of other countries. I think his greatest calling is that of a missionary. He travels extensively to other countries, establishing churches and leaving them to manage their affairs, much as the Apostle Paul did back in the early days of Christianity. Walter also is the president of Great Commission Ministries, perhaps the largest and most effective relief organization outside of perhaps the government in terms of providing food, clothing, shelter for the dispossessed. He operates homes for emergency living, one for women, one for men, and he also has that extensive social ministry on Wolf Road. But as far as I'm concerned, Walter is not only an activist, but a super activist. And when Walter takes on a cause, he sees it through. So we're delighted to have Walter as our third presenter this evening. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you can put your hands together and welcome our three main presenters. And we are going to then start with Matt Aubrey, and I think we have to dim the lights because he has a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Reverend Moss. Thank you so much for having us here. Between myself, Mark, and Bishop Hanschel, I think we've covered the globe. So I think we can bring all of this together here in the Bahamas. I think we'll be well. As the Reverend spoke, I do represent the Organization for Responsible Governance, and as he also let you know, we are the new kids on the block. Now, as the new kids on the block, the good thing is, again, you get to learn from folks who've done things before, and everyone is willing to sit me down and tell me how things have been. And they'll also tell me how things are going to be. And what's incredible is that across this archipelago, everybody I've talked to about the Freedom of Information Act feels similarly. They all feel it's necessary. They feel like they need to have a voice. They feel like they haven't been represented. They feel like they're questioning what government is doing and why it is doing it, and what's happening to the monies that have been provided from government, from things like VAT, and where it's going, and how it's been spent on things like Carnival and BAMSI. And they also wonder if there is truly honest representation in this government and in past governments. However, they also feel, it seems, another way, and that is common, is that this maybe is not an issue that they can do anything about. When I talk about the fact that we're pushing for passage of this bill, so many folks have told me, they'll never do it. And in that statement, I think we have to look at. When they say they mean the government. So they are the people that you have put in power, are the people who you pay their salary, are the people who are charged to represent your interests. So we have to challenge that issue of they. They're not going to let this happen. And I think that's true. They aren't. In most instances, a government is going to represent the government, and the will of the people has to come from the people. So we look at this as one of the biggest obstacles, is we need folks to understand why the Freedom of Information, or what we call FOIA, F-O-I-A, just to make it quick, why that represents and is for you. So we have a presentation that Nicole, our engagement coordinator, had put together that's called FOIA is FOIA. And we're going to go through this, and it'll tell you the basics of what is a Freedom of Information Act so that you are familiar with what it needs to be, because education is the first thing that has to happen. The next is action, and that's going to be on you. So we'll talk a little bit later about how you can be involved and how you can act, but let's spend a little time on education first. So, Nicole, if you'll lead us through it. So all the information contained in this presentation is based on the proposed 2015 bill, and it's subject to change. As the Reverend shared, we in fact don't know what will be tabled in front of Parliament, if it is tabled in front of Parliament. The version that we saw was put out last summer, 2015, and was reacted to by us and a number of other organizations. And so what we're giving you information on is the bill that was initially proposed. It may have changed slightly, but at least you'll understand what we're talking about when we talk about freedom of information and the particulars that relate to you. So the basics of freedom of information, it is an act. And what do you need to know? So I'm going to take the mic so I can get a little closer. So the Freedom of Information refers to the right of citizens to access information which has been collected and retained by the government on their behalf. So in the operations of government, they collect a lot of information, they receive messages. As they make their decisions, the hope is that they're using information that helps to define what those decisions are and why they might go forward. This gives you, as citizens of this country, the right to access that information. The information and in freedom of information refers to information or records. So we're really talking about records that you can access that contain pieces of information. It may be information about a health issue in your concern. It may be about how the grades of our public schools are operating. It may pertain to information that was made in a particular decision on land use. There may be a number of different things. How our environmental concerns are being addressed. All that information, but it's going to be in records. So the freedom of information across the world, and we have so many countries world, particularly in our region, that are embracing and making sure that they pass a Freedom of Information Act to serve their citizens. But it promotes good governance. It promotes citizen engagement and decision making. It means that the citizens of that country are involved and know why and what things are being decided and have a voice in telling their representatives how they want them to choose to use their money, choose to make decisions, move forward, deals on domestic issues, all sorts of things. That way. Sorry. It gives about transparency in the public service, and it reduces corruption. So you do have bad actors. We know this. We understand that in the Bahamas and in the Caribbean at large, there's a number of issues of corruption that prevail. However, this is a very strong deterrent towards that. If somebody's going to be making or taking monies or doing something that's going to benefit them, not the will of the people, and they know that media or individual citizens have the right to go get information because all that records are kept, they're going to think twice about doing so. So this protects and keeps corruption out of government. It also minimizes cronyism. You know how a lot of folks talk about the fact that, well, the only people getting those contracts are people who are related to the friends, families, and lovers we all talk about, right? Well, this makes sure that you go back and say, it seems like everybody that's getting these contracts lately is connected to the folks in this particular cabinet. Well, let's go back and see. Let's get that information. If we don't have access to that information, we can't make determination. And the other thing that it does, and this is about transparency the other way, so it promotes good governance because it helps those people who are in government, and there's a lot of those folks who are good citizens doing their job, wanting to represent the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It helps them to be protected. It helps them to know that they're acting in a way that's fair, that's just, and that they can do the job that they were appointed or elected to do. And it stabilizes the economy because it makes things fair. It gives a level playing field. You know that then there's going to be ample opportunity for folks in the economy if they do business in the right way. Not giving money under the table, not because I'm trying to lean on somebody because they're related to me, but that when we make choices of how government business